Maya, Jamal, and Connor grew up knowing one truth. In Liverpool's most dangerous postcodes, survival isn't about the law, it's about who holds the power on the streets. Behind locked doors and broken promises, their stories reveal a world where fear rules, silence suffocates, and gangland justice is the only justice you'll find. Liverpool's most dangerous neighborhoods are places that many people outside the city avoid at all costs. These areas, often called no-go zones, have become invisible to the rest of the world. They are tucked away behind crumbling walls and boarded-up windows, where poverty, neglect, and violence create a harsh reality. In these streets, the law seems powerless, or worse, absent. Police presence is rare and often met with hostility or silence. Instead of the usual rules that govern society, these areas follow a different set of laws, unwritten rules that are enforced by gangs who control everything from who can walk the streets to how justice is served. For the people living there, daily life is shaped by fear and survival. They have learned not to ask questions or trust outsiders because doing so could bring danger. These neighborhoods are full of stories that go untold. Stories of families torn apart, of young people trapped with no way out, and of a community that struggles to hold on to hope. The decay in these neighborhoods is hard to ignore. Abandoned buildings stand like ghosts from a better time, their windows shattered and graffiti-covered walls whispering forgotten memories. Streets once filled with laughter, and life now echo with silence and suspicion. Children grow up knowing the names of the gangs rather than the names of the streets they live on. It is a place where a simple walk home can turn into a dangerous journey. People live behind locked doors, peeking out only when they feel it is safe, always wary of what might be waiting just around the corner. The community is tightly knit, but it is held together by fear as much as by friendship. What makes these areas truly frightening is how little the outside world understands them. To most, they are places to avoid, labeled as violent and lawless, without a deeper look at the lives inside. But to the people who live there, the reality is complex. They are caught between the harsh rule of gangs and a justice system that feels distant and ineffective. This is a world where the usual protections of society vanish, replaced by street rules that leave no room for mercy. Liverpool's no-go zones are more than just dangerous neighborhoods. They are battlegrounds where the struggle for control is constant and survival is the only law. Liverpool is a city of sharp contrasts, where wealth and opportunity sit side by side with poverty and hardship. The divide between neighborhoods is striking, and nowhere is this more visible than in the no-go zones. These areas are marked by crumbling housing estates, abandoned shops, and streets that many people avoid after dark. On the surface, Liverpool's skyline might show a thriving city with its famous docks and lively culture, but beneath that lies a hidden world, where everyday life is a constant struggle. In these no-go zones, the effects of decades of economic decline and neglect have taken their toll. Jobs are scarce, schools are underfunded, and basic services are stretched thin. Many families face difficult living conditions, with generations caught in a cycle of unemployment and poverty. For the young people growing up here, the future often looks bleak. The lack of opportunity creates a fertile ground for gangs to take control. In neighborhoods where hope is hard to come by, gang life offers something many feel they cannot find elsewhere: money, respect, and a sense of belonging. These gangs don't just operate in the shadows, they are a visible presence on the streets, enforcing their rules with violence and intimidation. The law struggles to maintain order, and police officers often find themselves outnumbered or met with hostility. This lack of effective law enforcement allows gangs to strengthen their grip, controlling everything from drug trafficking to local businesses. For residents, this means living under constant pressure. Any perceived disrespect or challenge to the gang's authority can lead to severe consequences. But the situation is not simply about crime. It's about the deeper social issues that feed the cycle of violence. Families live in fear, not only of the gangs but also of the system that seems to have abandoned them. Schools and youth centers try to provide support, but their efforts are often overwhelmed by the harsh realities outside. Many young people feel they have no choice but to follow the path laid out by those around them. The community is caught in a vicious circle, where poverty leads to crime, and crime reinforces poverty. Breaking free seems impossible for many, as the boundaries between right and wrong blur in a place where survival is the only certainty. Liverpool's no-go zones are not just dangerous, they are a reflection of a city divided, struggling with issues far beyond the reach of the law. Over the past 10 years, a new generation of gang leaders has risen in Liverpool's most dangerous neighborhoods. These figures, known as the Shadow Lords, have transformed the way crime operates in the city's no-go zones. Unlike older gangs that were more loosely organized, the Shadow Lords run their operations with military precision. They control everything from drug trafficking to protection rackets and even influence local businesses. Their reach extends beyond the streets, infiltrating social services and sometimes even law enforcement. This hidden power makes them nearly untouchable, creating an atmosphere where the police often feel powerless to act. Their influence is quiet but deadly, growing steadily while the city looks elsewhere. The Shadow Lords are known for their strict codes and ruthless punishments. Loyalty is demanded above all else, and betrayal is met with swift and brutal consequences. Their style of control is different from the chaotic violence that once defined gang activity. Instead, they operate like shadow governments within the neighborhoods, enforcing order in their own way. They have become judges, juries, and executioners, deciding who is allowed to live and who must suffer. This form of gangland justice spreads fear but also offers a twisted sense of security to some residents who feel caught between the gangs and a police force unable to protect them. Despite the fear they inspire, the Shadow Lords are not invincible. Rival gangs challenge their authority, leading to ongoing turf wars that erupt into sudden and deadly clashes. These battles for control are fought quietly at first, but can explode without warning, leaving innocent people caught in the crossfire. The city's authorities struggle to keep up, often responding too late or facing resistance from within their own ranks. Corruption and intimidation make investigations difficult, and many cases end without arrests or justice. What makes the rise of the Shadow Lords so alarming is how deeply they have embedded themselves into daily life. They manipulate poverty, fear, and silence to maintain their power, making it nearly impossible for communities to break free. Their presence is a constant reminder that in Liverpool's no-go zones, the law of the streets has replaced the law of the land. This shadow government controls the fate of many, ruling from the darkness with an iron fist. The night the shooting happened, the neighborhood felt different. A tense silence hung over the streets as if something terrible was about to unfold. Just hours before, people had been going about their daily routines, families preparing dinner, children playing in the fading light. But the fragile peace was about to be shattered. A drive-by shooting tore through the quiet, the sound of gunfire echoing off the narrow alleyways and brick buildings. The chaos that followed left one man dead and others badly injured. But the most chilling part wasn't just the violence. It was the message left behind. Scrawled in bold letters on the wall near the scene was a warning, a brutal reminder that the gangs controlled these streets. It was a message meant to instill fear not only in rival gangs, but in the community itself. For many residents, this act was not a shocking surprise but rather confirmation of the dangers that lurked just beyond their doors. The police arrived quickly, but their presence did little to calm the growing tension. Investigators moved slowly, hindered by a wall of silence that blanketed the area. Witnesses were too scared to come forward, and the usual community trust had long since eroded. This shooting was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of escalating violence. Rival gangs were locked in a deadly struggle for control over territory and illegal trades. Each act of violence was a move in a dangerous game, with retaliation always looming. These battles left neighborhoods in a constant state of alert, with innocent people often caught in the crossfire. The damage went beyond physical injuries. It fractured communities and deepened the sense of hopelessness. Despite the terror, some residents refused to be completely silenced. Small acts of defiance, like speaking out anonymously or organizing community watch groups, began to surface. But the risks were enormous, and for many, the choice was clear: stay silent and survive, or speak out and risk becoming the next target. The shooting marked a turning point for the area, highlighting how deeply violence had taken root and how difficult it would be to break free from the cycle of fear and revenge. It was a brutal reminder that in these no-go zones, life is fragile, and justice is often written in blood. In the no-go zones of Liverpool, a powerful force keeps the streets quiet: the code of silence. This unspoken rule governs how people live and survive amid constant threats. Speaking to outsiders or law enforcement is seen as betrayal, and breaking this code can bring dangerous consequences. It creates a barrier between the community and those trying to help, trapping residents in a cycle where fear outweighs trust. For many, staying silent is the only way to protect themselves and their families. The code is not just about fear, it's also about loyalty. In neighborhoods where gangs hold power, people rely on one another for safety, even if that safety comes at a high price. Informing the police often means risking violent retaliation from gang members. Over time, this silence becomes a shield, preventing the truth from coming out and allowing criminal activities to flourish unchecked. Police investigations stall, cases go cold, and justice becomes nearly impossible to achieve. The gangs thrive in this darkness, knowing that few will dare to speak against them. This silence also isolates victims and survivors. Those caught in the middle of gang violence often suffer in silence, afraid to seek help or share their stories. Domestic violence, intimidation, and threats are common, but they rarely reach the outside world. Many live in constant fear, unsure who they can trust. The community's silence becomes a prison, limiting opportunities for healing or change. It also creates a sense of hopelessness, as people feel forgotten and unheard. At the same time, the code of silence is deeply ingrained in the culture of these neighborhoods. It is passed down from generation to generation, making it difficult to break free. Parents warn their children to keep quiet, and neighbors avoid discussing dangerous matters openly. Even when some individuals want to speak out, the pressure to conform is overwhelming. The outside world may see these areas as violent and lawless, but for those inside, the silence is a survival tactic. It's a grim reminder that in Liverpool's no-go zones, fear rules not only the streets, but also the voices of those trapped within. Children growing up in Liverpool's no-go zones face challenges that few outside these neighborhoods can truly understand. From an early age, many are exposed to violence, poverty, and instability. The environment shapes their world, leaving little room for dreams or hope. Schools, meant to be places of learning and safety, often struggle to provide a refuge. Overcrowded classrooms, underfunded resources, and the constant threat of gangs nearby make it hard for children to focus on anything beyond survival. Many young people begin to see the streets as their only option for belonging and respect, drawn by the power and money that gang life seems to offer. The pressure to join gangs can be overwhelming. For some, it starts as a way to protect themselves or their families. For others, it's about escaping the loneliness and hopelessness of their daily lives. Gangs promise loyalty and identity in a world where both are scarce, but this choice comes at a heavy cost. Many of these children find themselves caught in a cycle of crime and violence that is difficult to escape. They face dangers not only from rival gangs, but also from law enforcement, who often treat them as criminals rather than victims of their environment. The streets become classrooms of a harsh education, one filled with fear, mistrust, and constant threats. The impact on families is devastating. Parents watch helplessly as their children are pulled deeper into the gang culture, unable to protect them from the dangers lurking outside their doors. Siblings and friends are lost to violence, imprisonment, or addiction. The sense of community that once offered support is fractured, replaced by suspicion and grief. Yet, amid the despair, there are stories of resilience. Some young people manage to break free, driven by a desire for a better life, or the help of dedicated teachers and mentors. These rare successes highlight the strength hidden beneath the surface of these neighborhoods. But for most, the path is grim. The lost generation grows up quickly, learning that survival often means making impossible choices. Childhood innocence fades fast in Liverpool's no-go zones, replaced by a daily fight to endure. This harsh reality shapes the future of the city, as the cycle of violence and poverty threatens to continue unchecked. Behind the locked doors of rundown houses and hidden basements, safe houses have become crucial, or bribery have leaked information to gangs, undermining efforts to protect residents. This betrayal strikes at the heart of the community's fragile trust in law enforcement, making it even harder for victims to come forward or believe in justice. Safe houses sometimes feel more like prisons, where people wait in silence, unsure if they are truly safe or merely hidden. Despite these challenges, safe houses remain a lifeline for many. They are the starting points for rebuilding lives, where individuals receive counseling, legal help, and support to break free from their past. The people who run these shelters often work quietly, risking their own safety to provide care. Their efforts are a beacon of hope in neighborhoods dominated by fear and control, but the struggle to maintain these safe spaces is ongoing. Limited resources, threats from gangs, and the deep-rooted mistrust in the system make their work a constant battle. The existence of safe houses highlights the desperate need for change in Liverpool's no-go zones. They are a reminder that behind the headlines and crime statistics are real people fighting to survive and reclaim their lives. But until the grip of gangs loosens and corruption is rooted out, these shelters will remain fragile sanctuaries in a city still shadowed by violence. The planned truce between rival gangs in Liverpool's no-go zones was supposed to bring a moment of peace, a chance to end years of violence that had torn communities apart. For months, secret talks took place in hidden locations, with gang leaders agreeing to lay down their weapons and focus on rebuilding control without bloodshed. Many hoped this would be the turning point, a chance for the neighborhoods to breathe and maybe, just maybe, begin to heal. But what was meant to be a ceasefire turned into one of the deadliest nights the city had ever seen. Tensions that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted unexpectedly during the first gathering, meant to formalize the truce. What started as a quiet meeting quickly spiraled into chaos. A sudden betrayal, whether planned or accidental, ignited a violent confrontation. Shots rang out, turning a fragile peace into a deadly battle. Innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire were left injured or worse, deepening the tragedy. The violence shattered any hope that the gangs would step back from their long-standing feud. Instead, it marked the beginning of a new, more dangerous chapter. Amid the chaos, unexpected players emerged from the shadows. Smaller factions, previously overlooked, seized the opportunity to expand their influence. These groups were less bound by the old rules and more ruthless in their pursuit of power. Their rise complicated the already volatile situation, making the streets even more dangerous and unpredictable. The old gangs found themselves fighting not only each other but also these new rivals who operated without hesitation or mercy. The city's authorities were caught off guard by the scale and suddenness of the violence. Police forces struggled to contain the outbreak, overwhelmed by the sheer number of incidents occurring simultaneously. Investigations were hindered by the familiar code of silence, with witnesses too afraid to come forward. The media called it a massacre, a brutal reminder of how fragile peace can be in these no-go zones. This night of reckoning reshaped the power dynamics in Liverpool's most dangerous postcodes. It showed that despite attempts at peace, the thirst for control and revenge runs deep. The consequences would ripple through the city, leaving residents fearful and uncertain about what the future might hold. Amid the overwhelming fear and silence that gripped Liverpool's no-go zones, a quiet but determined resistance began to form. This underground movement, known as the Whisper Network, was made up of brave individuals who refused to let the gang's control go unchallenged. They operated in the shadows, sharing information through secret channels, passing messages quietly between trusted neighbors, and meeting in hidden locations to plan ways to protect their communities. The Whisper Network became a fragile lifeline, offering hope to those who felt trapped and voiceless. Members of the network came from all walks of life. Parents, former gang members, community workers, and even a few local business owners. Each risked everything to stand against the violence that had defined their lives for so long. They knew that speaking out could bring deadly consequences, but they also understood that silence meant endless suffering. The Whisper Network was not a group seeking revenge, but a movement driven by the desire for safety, justice, and a chance for a better future. Despite their courage, the members faced enormous challenges. The gangs were always watching, and betrayal was punished harshly. Trust had to be earned slowly, and paranoia was a constant companion. Information had to be carefully guarded, passed only to those who proved loyal. The network's efforts to expose gang activity and corruption within local authorities sometimes hit roadblocks, as not everyone outside the community believed their stories or was willing to help. Even within the police force, some officers remained skeptical or compromised, making it harder for the network to gain traction. Still, the Whisper Network began to make small but meaningful impacts. They helped protect vulnerable individuals, supported families seeking to escape gang control, and provided vital information to trusted law enforcement officials willing to act. Their stories started to reach beyond the no-go zones, raising awareness and inspiring others to listen. But the fight was far from over. The Whisper Network knew their work was dangerous and that every step forward came with risk. Their existence was a fragile beacon of hope in a city shadowed by fear, reminding everyone that even in the darkest places, courage and resistance can take root. Whether their efforts would be enough to break the cycle of violence remained uncertain, but their voices could no longer be ignored. As pressure mounted from both the Whisper Network and a new wave of determined law enforcement, the no-go zones in Liverpool began to show cracks in the gang's iron grip. A massive police crackdown was launched, involving coordinated raids, arrests, and efforts to dismantle the shadowy networks that had thrived for years. For the first time in a long while, residents felt a flicker of hope that change might be possible. Streets that had once been dominated by fear and violence began to see a cautious return of normal life. But beneath the surface, the battle was far from over. The gangs adapted quickly. Their leaders went deeper underground, using more secretive methods to continue their operations. Control shifted from visible muscle on the streets to hidden influence in businesses, social services, and even local politics. The war for power took new forms, less obvious but equally dangerous. Corruption and intimidation remained tools of choice, making it difficult to fully root out the gangland networks. This new landscape made it clear that breaking the chains of fear required more than police action. It needed a long-term commitment from the whole city. Then came the final twist that few expected. Investigations uncovered a hidden alliance between some city officials and key gang figures. This alliance had helped protect the gangs for years, ensuring their survival even under heavy police scrutiny. The revelation shocked the public and sparked outrage. It exposed the depth of the problem and showed how deeply the no-go zone's influence had penetrated the city's institutions. This betrayal made it clear that real change would require confronting uncomfortable truths and dismantling powerful connections built on corruption and fear. For many residents, the discovery was both devastating and empowering. It explained why progress had been slow and why the gangs had seemed untouchable. At the same time, it fueled a renewed determination to fight for justice and reclaim their neighborhoods. Community groups, activists, and honest officials joined forces to demand transparency and accountability. Liverpool's no-go zones remain dangerous, and the road ahead is uncertain, but the chains of silence and fear are beginning to break. The city faces a critical choice: to continue allowing shadowy power to thrive or to confront its darkest secrets and build a future where